Morena, kia ora everybody, what's up? It is Robett. Welcome to Robett Live, episode 259. Talking to a lot of people, learning lots of stuff. I hope the Friday's going A-OK. I'm still in California. We've just gone into lockdown again. I'm into my hub of a hub. Same copy-paste, month 8. Here we go. So let's get into it. On the show today, the Queen of New Zealand property. She's just come back fresh off the Woman of Influence Awards up in Auckland. And in the mix, ladies and gentlemen, Nikki Connors.
Hello,
morning, Nikki. How are you?
I'm good down here in Christchurch today. I was saying before, I went in to get myself a cup of coffee and a muffin and then came back. It was all very civilized. You can't do that there, can you?
Nothing indoors. It's all gone to lockdown again. So everything basically has been back on shutdown, but it feels there's a tension between lockdown fatigue of those who are just sick of copy paste versus the potential actual risk to what it's doing with the economy and all the rest of it. So it's been a very interesting year to be in America, that's for sure, with a lot of stuff. So I get envious seeing back home, and then at the same time I'm like, shit, you know. But at the end of the day, this is where we're at. Christchurch, how are you? How are you doing?
Well, it's lovely down here. Of course, it's the start of summer, and being around the pool, I do feel sorry for you. I feel sorry for my family in the UK. I mean, it's funny how the world is and the criticism. I mean, we do everything right, and we're back to normal. I went to a concert a couple of weeks ago. I was at the awards with 800 people the other night. And yet New Zealanders are called sheep with no saying or individuality because we followed and agreed as a country to go into lockdown. Now, as a small business owner, I've got 4 businesses and I've got a lot of people that work with me. It was very difficult. But if we hadn't have done that, how much worse could it have been? And it just makes me so frustrated. You know, this conversation, especially in the US, about personal freedom. Well, New Zealanders are all about personal freedom, but what is the use of that if you're dead? What is the use of that? And how can you enjoy personal freedom if the people you love are dead? And I just feel so sorry. I love the States. You know, I'm there every year. I was there last year in New York. I'm there every year in LA. And wonderful, you know, it's just such a wonderful country. And to see it decimated like it is just the saddest thing. It really is. So, my heart is with everyone there.
Well, I know in New Zealand, the consequences of this I think it was 2 months lockdown, they were saying that it's going to take potentially 3 years to sort of build back up financially with the consequences of such a short lockdown in the scheme of things. And then I think of America, and then you think of this fact that it's been 8 months now, and bunch of places still in lockdown all around the world. And if we're going to have a 3-year crawl back after just 8 weeks, I wonder what it's going to be like for the States with 8 months, you know. So that, unfortunately, the long tail of this is going to be quite substantial, I believe. And I think we're probably just starting to see the start of it right now with the restructuring and a few other bits and pieces. But, you know, it's clear the government isn't just going to give everyone free money for everyone. And interesting.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it is. It is. Just going back to that 3-year recovery, though, in New Zealand, I was asked to comment all the way through lockdown, TV, radio, and press. And I had one interview with a business magazine where I totally refuted this long recovery and how it was going to be doom and gloom. And I said that I just don't believe that is the case. And I looked, and in fact, I was called Pollyanna. You know, it was like, oh, this naive woman and it's like, no, well, frig you, because this is what I believe. And this is based on being on the ground floor, which was before lockdown. We had such a huge demand for housing in New Zealand, huge demand. The billions that have been spent on temporary housing for New Zealanders. So not only for homes to live in, for first home buyers and whatever, but certainly for people that were renting. And so we were seeing that, places like Hamilton, Auckland, rents going up. Hamilton, rents going up by over 8% per annum, and such a shortage of good property. You see, this is not like Australia. This is not like the States. We don't have huge rafts of land that we can open up and for thousands and thousands more people. It's not like that. And so we had a shortage of property before lockdown, and a shortage of rental property, for instance. And we had the banks that were not lending to developers. There isn't a lot of development to the level that we need. We are a very dynamic country. We're a very successful financially, country in the world. It's a first world country. We are on the cutting edge of a lot of industry, innovation, and it just didn't make sense that, on the other hand, we, in Auckland alone, 20,000 houses or 20,000 dwellings are required to meet the demand today. And now that's today, but we weren't going to see any of that, being taken care of, 5,000 or 6,000, that's my dog, apologies, over the next, Milo, over the next 5 or 6 years. Now, of course, we've got interest rates now that have gone down and down. That was the other thing. I said interest rates will continue to go down. And I was talking to Tony Alexander, ex-BNZ chief economist, about negative interest rates. And, it was like, oh, Nikki, that's not going to happen. And, I just felt that as a country, we would bounce back very, very quickly. So I'm not going to get on my high horse here, but the reality was we have. And now what have we got? The lowest interest rates, 2.5 or 2.34%. So, which is just amazing. I remember the days, and this ages me, when interest rates in New Zealand were 21% in the 80s. So so you've got low interest rates. You've got the building not happening to the same degree. So there is like this huge requirement for tradespeople and businesses. We bounced back. The government helped us a little bit, not enough, and they directed the banks to help us, who didn't, by the way. So, I'm on my high horse about that. The government was offering, saying to the banks, we will guarantee 80% of anything that you loan to small businesses, 80% guaranteed, and yet I didn't know one small business that actually got a loan. And despite all of that, we've bounced back. We are so busy as a company, my property investment company, my design and furniture pack company, and people are out and eating and drinking and getting on with their lives. And yes, there's a little bit with, when I say a little bit, but in the tourism industry, service industry. However, New Zealanders are travelling all around New Zealand. I mean, we're huge travellers overseas, billions and billions spent us travelling. Now we're doing it internally. So we're not seeing hotels giving discounted rates. We're back to what it normally is, and we are seeing parts of our country. So that has only happened over the last couple of months. So it hasn't been 3 years. And I don't believe that the recovery will be 3 years. I mean, how far away are we from getting the vaccinations, for instance? That was supposed to be 2 to 3 years away. And now they're talking about, in the UK, having something after Christmas. In the US, within the next couple of 6 months. So at least we're getting on with it. And the thing was that it was 3 months, and we had maybe 1.5 lockdowns, if you like. So, and now we're moving on, but it's going to take longer for the rest of the world because everyone is worried about their own personal freedom. And they're going out and they're flouting, the social rules. And to me, you can't scream about how your business is going under and then going outside without wearing a mask. I mean, you can't have it both ways.
Well, I think that a lot to unpack there, Nikki. I love the ranting. It's flipping great. So in the States, the thing is, health got politicized. If you wore a mask, were you a Democrat? If you didn't, then you're a Republican. You want your freedom. The same way I put it down to, when you're in the streets. I grew up in Christchurch, but in Aranui, if you were blue, you were Crip. If you were red, you were Blood. And here it's like, if you wear a bandana, how did a hat of wearing a red hat become? Are you a pro-Trump or a no hat? All these little things. It's kind of weird how. For a country that's supposed to be united, it's clear it is definitely not. I want to rewind back a little bit. So maybe I'll start with this one. The Queen of Property. Who, if you're the Queen, A, what makes you the Queen? But then B, who would the King be?
I was termed the Queen of Property on the cover of a magazine about 4 years ago. And that was because when it came to investment property, when it came to knowledge about how to strategize that, that's what I was known for. My background was that I was a creative director in advertising agencies in the 80s and 90s. And I always say that property investment's not about real estate, it's an investment. And so I put together a strategy in which I could help my clients understand what they were trying to achieve socially and financially, short, medium, long-term goals. In New Zealand, 50% of New Zealanders will retire with a mortgage. And having lost my home after being very successful and taking companies to the secondary market in the UK and being worth millions and losing it and starting again, I felt that as it was property that got me back, my passion was then to pass that knowledge on. And so I've been very vocal on how investment property can work. And because I suppose that being a woman as well, and with the book coming out talking about my struggles both financially and socially in relationships, it got to the stage where I was being invited to speak at a lot of different events, different companies, whether it was about business or as a motivational speaker. And I suppose that's how the Queen of Property came about, because I do the due diligence on, or my team do, on all of the property that we recommend. I am very vocal in my criticism on some of the legislation around property, around the homeless. And so that's how I suppose that grew. And I'm not, it's not too bad a title to have.
No, not at all.
And I've also seen that, it's really, you talk about the Reds and the Blues. There's been quite a few of my competitors, especially the young guys that are coming up in this, that have taken, great exception to that and have tried to pull down the Queen. But, hey, I've lived through the GFC, I've lived through 2 marriages, I've lived through a lot. It's going to take a lot more than that to pull me down. Now, the second thing, who is the king?
Yeah.
Well, I only came on this, of course, as an alternative to a dating site. What can I say? My history isn't that great. I was saying to you before we got started that you can call me whatever surname you like. I mean, I've got about 3 of them. So not in marriages, but 2 marriages, 2 divorces. So not particularly successful. Still looking for my king, for my lord.
Yeah.
It hasn't happened yet, and of course I can't get out to the States, I can't get to Europe, so I love American men, I love English, I love French, and they're all just this far away from me at the moment.
You're flipping nuts. I love it. It's great. I'll ask you this.
Now you know why I haven't got a king. Thank you.
That's great. No, there's something about when you've got an opinion, you flip and say it, and when you've got, like, I'm extremely the same. If I feel a certain way, I just say it, regardless what, most times to my detriment. But it feels I'm slowly getting smarter as I get older. But you can't help when you feel about something, do a certain way. So maybe I'll ask this: when you transition from creative director, and I think it was Saatchi's, right? Was it Saatchi's that you're at? So it's the Kevin Robett Day, it's Derek Lockwood's world. Yep.
Oh, Derek Lockwood. Yes, I know Derek. Yep.
Yeah. So my previous media company was acquired by Saatchi and Publicist Group a couple of years ago. So I know those guys pretty good. They're crazy, but it definitely sounds like the 80s was a different sort of time with the long lunches and the other festivities. I've heard many a story. I've heard. What is the biggest difference between, you feel, marketing in the 80s and marketing in 2020 from what you've seen as from the outside or inside then, and then obviously outside now?
Well, of course, brands. I worked on and won the Air New Zealand account when I was, along with the team, obviously, at Mattingly and partners here in New Zealand. And it was all about branding, which is something that I believe completely in, and is what has seen my businesses. And, you talk about the Queen of Property. When I got that title, that became part of my brand. And what happens when you build up brand values, which is whatever they may be, whether it's for creativity, whether it's for integrity, whether it's for knowledge, or whatever it is, if you continue to build on that, then when times get tough, if we go through something, God forbid, like this again, but we did go through the GFC, and I started Propeller Property Investments in the GFC, and of course the GFC was all about property. Why did the whole world sort of go under? But what saw me through all of that was the brand and the brand values that I had built up and continue to maintain. Now you come into into these days, and even in the late 90s as well, it's about the deal. It's about 20% saving. So when you look at advertising above the line, if you like, so that TV, radio, magazine, it is all about the money that you can save. Now that's fine, but what that does is put you in the spiral where you will always be in competition with someone who's going to come in at 2 cents less. That it's not about quality, so you're always fighting to be to give the lowest price, and that does not evoke loyalty. So because you're in a constant price war. Now the other thing with the 80s was, of course, it was all about above the line. There was no such thing as social media. It's crazy to think about it, because it's almost like I can't believe I lived in what is, really the dark ages, in that I only got computers, at a certain time in my career. So there was nothing like that. The only media that you had was TV, radio, print. Now, of course, it is just completely, it's fractured. And to succeed, and you'll know yourself when you look at some of the major media companies, like here in New Zealand, we had a major media company that got sold for $1 because of the debt was so high. I wouldn't have a magazine, and I used to be a publisher of a magazine. I wouldn't have a magazine. I wouldn't have And I don't do any advertising anymore on above the line media. It's all PR and it's all online. And for us, that's where we get our leads. But our message is only accepted in a positive way because of the above branding, and continue with that branding. So I could come out as a completely random, unknown person and say, come and talk to me about property investment. And I'll be saying that, and it doesn't matter how that is packaged creatively. I'll be one of a dozen in this country that's saying, come and talk to me about property investment. I'm the expert. Well, how can you be an expert if you're a young guy in your early 30s? You've only been doing this for a couple of years. I mean, I'm not saying that's the age thing, but it's certainly the experience. So why my company gets the sort of responses that it does to the level it does is because of all of the branding behind it. So my story is known, my book is known. I get asked my opinion on certain things, and that comes from building up that credibility, not only in the market, but also with the media as well, so that they come back to you. So your opinion has some value. So therefore, you and what you have to say, and therefore your business has some value as well. So it is great to have all of these different options that are now available that we didn't have in the 80s. And plus, I was drunk in the 80s. I don't even know what options we had then. I was being dragged back at 3 p.m. for a presentation. My ex-husband used to have to pick me up off the couch at 5:30 and take me home because I was off my face. But so those were the good old bad old days. But it comes down to the fact that values, it doesn't matter how sophisticated or how far media moves on or the choices that you have, it comes down to the values that you represent and that you prove every day.
So if you were to take your skill set in 2020 back to 1980, back into the world of old school, how would you try? What would you have done differently? If all the skill set, everything else that you knew right now around everything, and you went back, what would you do?
I suppose two things. It was very difficult, and I don't want to sort of like harp on this either, women and media, and poor us and all of that sort of shit. But I did not trust how good I was, first of all. And as a creative, I could not talk about money. I left it to the suits in advertising to talk about money. And yet I would be standing and up in front of a group of people and selling something that was, a $1 million campaign, which was not insignificant in those days. We threw money at the problem in advertising in the 80s and early 90s. We certainly threw our clients' money at the issue. I think if I went back, I would be a lot smarter in how that money was spent and how targeted I would be in reaching certain people. But we didn't have the outlets that we have. So we only had what we had to work with, which was radio, incredibly powerful. I started at Radio Hauraki in Auckland and writing copy, and I still love radio. I absolutely love it because it's like Zoom without the pictures, except everyone's got pictures now. You can see someone in the studio, and it painted very strong pictures with words that didn't actually cost a lot either. So the other thing is that what we've seen today is the celebrity endorsement. Now, we had that of course, we've had that all the way through as advertising has, when it first started. But it's a lot more sophisticated now, that endorsement. It is, it's taken it to a different level. And I think that would have made a huge difference if we had understood just the dimension of the opportunity there. But of course, in the 80s, it was someone standing, as it was in the 50s and 60s and 70s, standing and holding something and saying, buy this. Today, you don't even know whether they've been, it's advertising or it's a personal opinion. And in a way, it doesn't even matter, does it? If someone that you admire that's got 100 million followers is holding something, it doesn't matter whether she likes it or uses it. It's out there.
So on that, if you were a brand then, so that's if you're taking your skill set back to 1980, what you do differently. If you were a big brand in New Zealand or the world right now and you had $10 million to spend to market your product, your service, whatever, how would you allocate that capital in 2020 differently? Where would you spend $10 million right now for marketing on a business? What would you do?
Well, of course, this is terrible, isn't it? $10 million. I mean, one endorsement from a Kardashian is in the millions, and that's less than 30 seconds. I would it's not a lot. It is certainly not a lot, and it's not a lot even in New Zealand really anymore. But I would give it, dare I say it, I'd give it to one Kardashian for 2 tweets. And
really?
that would give me sales. Look, you look at there's a product at the moment which I love. No one's paying me, by the way, to say this. It's called Dose, and it's fantastic. It's a health supplement, and my hairdresser told me about it, and I went and I ordered it online, and it was coconut flavored, and you add it to stuff, and it was great. Next thing you know, and it's a New Zealand company, next thing you know, it's been endorsed by a Kardashian and it's billions. Now, that's a small New Zealand company for a supplement. So we have to be realistic, whether you believe in that or not, whether you believe in
influencer culture.
Yeah, exactly. Unfortunately, you can't fight it. This is what we live in, and I'm not saying that's not an excuse to think a certain way and do certain things because that's what the populace is into. But hey, if you've got a brand and you really quickly want to get that onto a certain stage, I would. If I had 10 million, and if I had one of the Kardashian girls saying, if I was going to invest in property, I'd do it in New Zealand because it is going to give you the best returns, and I'd do it with Nikki because Nikki is the most honourable person I know. She's so smart, and I love her. I'll give her 10 million, and I tell you what, there wouldn't be enough property in New Zealand to take care of that demand, satisfy the demand.
It's a very interesting conversation around the influencer side. I've been wondering around if it's you get moments of campaign pop or you actually get substantial depth within it, because if it's a transaction for an individual without them having equity in it for that ongoing piece, I wonder how that plays out over the 1, 3, 5 year thing. I want to jump back to something you said before with the 80s around, being a female, maybe not enough confidence in yourself, blah, 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 blah. Now Queen of New Zealand Property, how tougher has it been tougher that you felt being a female in the lane that you're in? Not to get into some soppy sap shit, but in a market, I know a female in the construction business who has told me that it is extremely, she was extremely kind of outcast, not one of the boys club at the table, blah, blah, that whole, I've heard all that. Have you had a similar experience, or what's your experience being a female within the property game, especially when you're trying to be loud? And I'm sure there's a bunch of young rah-rah dudes telling you to shut your face. How's that gone?
Well, gosh, you've opened that door. You've opened that door. I blame you.
You go for it. Go for it. I don't know.
Okay, so let me tell you about the 80s. My name in the 80s, with my first marriage, my maiden name is Farrell, and I married a Graham, so I was Farrell Graham. And so it was Nikki Farrell Graham. So my nickname was No Fucking Good, NFG. And yet I'd won all sorts of awards, but I'm no fucking good. And when I was earning what I was earning, and I was offered the roles that I was offered, and even being part of winning the New Zealand campaign, I was still no fucking good, and I slept my way to it. I probably would have if there'd been anyone cute, but there wasn't, and so it was a very difficult time because, we're talking the white shoe brigade. A lot of these guys had come in the 60s and 70s from selling cars. So I remember as a young copywriter sitting there, and there's someone coming, my boss coming and standing there with his crotch in my face and having a conversation. There I am having a conversation. And, the things that went on, you just had to deal with, because you're not going to be seen as difficult. You want to be out drinking. I had a young child towards the end of my time there. And if I wasn't out drinking till 3 a.m, I was missing out on what was going on. And I was out of the friggin' loop, and you couldn't be that, because advertising is and probably still is very, very political, and to get a knife in your back. And I was on the board of an agency, and I'm still getting a knife in my back. So, and then, okay, so let's go to the 2000s. Now, I'm used to that. To me, it is like, all right, that's just the day-to-day, how it is. But you're absolutely right. You come into property and developers, and the attitude is, because I have failed, because I now can talk about money, because I've got 14 people that rely on me to pay their bills, to pay their mortgages, for their children's schools, I've got a responsibility to make sure that they all get paid, right? And I'm dealing with developers. Now, most of them are great, but developers have a reputation for a particular reason. And one of the things that some of them do, just some of them, is that believe that they will, that anything that you do, as if you're selling their properties or marketing their properties, or you're building their properties, they do not need to pay you. Because they don't, that they're doing you a favor. And so a lot of how it's set up is that a developer will start a business, a company, to build a particular development. And then when the development's built, they'll put down the company. And if you're owed money, well, that's a shame, isn't it? Because the company's has been put into liquidation, or it's gone under. Now, I've had that a couple of times, and you see, I fight. I wouldn't have been able to in the past, but I now fight. And we had something here a few years ago where a group of men who thought that they were very, very important in New Zealand, and had a lot of money, and I sold a great deal of property for their development, that they weren't paying us, and it was before Christmas, and I had all my team needing to have their money for Christmas. And the lies that I got, like I'm in the bank now about to pay your $500,000 and whatever, complete lies. And so I now fight. And in one instance, and the two guys that I was talking about originally, they're in prison. But this was 4 or 5 years ago, and I sat there and I would not leave. And I even said, right, I want to be paid. And I wasn't the only one, but I wasn't going to let this go. And I did, my team, and we did get paid, but I was very nice about it, because I said, you your families all live in Remuera, and your children go to nice schools. And Remuera, for those who don't know, is like the big upmarket suburb in Auckland. And they would be very horrified if we called them and just let them know that our children are not going to be able to go back to school, or our children aren't going to be able to go to the dentist because your husband's been doing this. Now, I mean, this is a terrible thing. It wasn't nice, but I got to this. I had to get to the stage where I've got to protect my own. I've got to protect my people, and to do it in a particular, and to make sure that there is a result that is going to be, and not in a way that is abrasive or abusive, but in a way that is tenacious. And so I've got a bit of a reputation now, which is so funny because I couldn't talk about finances in the 80s in creative, but now I do. And, through lockdown, I had a developer who owed the company money. And, everyone that's got a small business is really, it was a tough time, even though I was going out and I was saying, yes, it's great. I inside was panicking. We had no business whatsoever, and I wanted to be paid. And, you say to a developer, you've owed me this for a long time, and still being really nice about it. And I think that it's about time, you need to pay us. And I got screamed at. I got called all of these names and threatened to go to the press about the fact that I was trying to get money through lockdown. And I said, yes, I am. The Prime Minister has said people still need to pay their bills. And so if I had been a man, I suppose, or that conversation where I had been screamed at and threatened probably wouldn't have happened, because it's about, this is what I want, this is what I expect, we have done and achieved this, I have people that I look after, and I take that role very seriously. So yes, your friend that's in that construction, it is it is a fight, and it's personalities as well. There are certain personalities that go into my industry as property investment, and that haven't been doing it for a long time, and are very brash about their skills and their ability, and there's also developers as well that are also very brash about their skills and their ability and showing their wealth, and that's not something that I feel particularly comfortable about. So,
So what was you didn't have enough confidence in the 80s. Now you're, tenacious and, going after it. Was there a tipping point where your confidence shifted, or you actually found that, had it been there the whole time and you held it away, you didn't have it and it grew? What was there a moment where then you felt you could go on offense for what you represented, what you're about?
Well, it came down to a personal thing, actually. When I was in the UK, my second husband and I, we came up with an idea in which to market books. Now, it sounds crazy now because everyone's got Kindles and everyone goes online to Amazon, but that wasn't around. And we came up with a way in which to supply content as well. And it won an award for one of the best ideas in the world. And we took it to the secondary market, and we raised all of this money. And then and I used equity in my investment properties in the UK, and didn't pay mortgages and whatever to get us to that stage. And when we were about for the company to go ahead, I found that I was no longer part of this, that the advisors to us that had helped us get this far, they had two young guys that were going to come in with my husband and take over. So and at that time, my husband said, you're out. It was a very, very difficult time, and you're stupid, you're old, all of these things that you actually think in yourself that probably is the case, and then it's verbalized. So I cracked up completely, and my son at the time was about 12, 13, And so I was down to absolutely nothing. And so to come back, I had to start again from less than zero. And I think the tipping point for me, not only have my family having faith and saying you are smart, and seeing that these young guys failed as well, because they weren't as smart as they thought they were. It didn't go ahead without me. I got to the stage where I'd known what it's like to fail. You see, this is the trouble. People pull back on making decisions because they're scared of failure. And it's like, it's this terrible, terrible thing. And so you're going to take the safe path. Now, I had failure. I lost everything. And it wasn't so bad. I mean, it was pretty terrible, but I came out of it. So therefore, that took the fear away. But also, having been bullied and made to feel that there were other people with better ideas than me that actually didn't achieve a lot more than me, I started to think, and especially when I started Propeller, and I had a couple of partners at that time who started to say the same thing, especially through the GFC when I was, no, it wasn't the GFC, it was the earthquakes down in Christchurch. I started at Propeller down in Christchurch, and we had the two decimating earthquakes. And Propeller was Christchurch based, and so it could have just disappeared. And there was no money. And my partners are going, this is it, blah, blah, blah. And I said, well, we're going to go into another market. We're going to go into the Auckland market, but we had no money. So I went in and negotiated 3 months free in offices. I went to the media and I negotiated 90 days. And with a consultant that worked with me, he would go up and we'd pay his expenses. So he paid for himself to go up to do the first appointments. Then I would go up and do the strategizing with clients. And throughout all of that, I had these two partners, two guys screaming at me about what I was doing and how irresponsible, and I was spending money that we didn't have. And, it was just terrible. I mean, I was like this. They left, and it was the best thing. And I think because Propeller is now a multi-million-dollar company, as that's 11 years on, highly, highly successful. So it came to a stage where I had to say, no, I've been through failure. I understand now some of the things that has to be done to make this work. And that's what failure does, that you get those lessons. And I defy anyone to name a successful person that has not failed at some stage. And so failure doesn't define you as a failure. It's just something that is, that's just a learning lesson, if you like. So, I now have faith in myself, and even when I bring people into my business to help me manage it, and they have all ideas, and it's all sort of, you've got to feel confident and trust in yourself. And it's trust in yourself, whatever way, and to be able to make a decision, whether in the end it could be wrong or right. It doesn't matter. Always make decisions, because the decision will take you in different paths and different opportunities.
Great segue into a rap artist that I'm a fan of, Jay-Z. He said in an interview once, he was, one of the key parts to his success was you need to genuinely believe in yourself when no one else does, even those closest to you. And it's something interesting, like Big Sean, another rapper, probably don't know him, but he's pretty good. He started with rap. Oh, yeah, there you go. I don't know if you know down with Big Sean. I'm not sure if you, I don't know. But he says, I've got friends that are in my circle, but not in my corner. And it was interesting of just, you wonder when you get to spot with those that are around you, who you think would have your back in in the corner actually potentially don't, or those potentially are your husband or your partner or whatever in certain things. If you listened to them and didn't believe in yourself, you would have been like, stuff it. No, they're probably right. Maybe I'm done. Maybe I can't do it, whatever else as well. So that internal resistance to, and persistence to keep going when many said, I remember my first business, one of my first ones, I said to my two closest buddies, like, hey, this is what I'm going to do. And they're like, you're crazy, stuff that. They, put water on the fire. So I was going to come back to the thing. So you've mentioned a couple of times, you've been married a couple of times. In the States, there's this thing called is it the 12.5? Is it the GST? I think it was called the GST Club. Is that the right word? And it was
the GST, it's GST in New Zealand, which is tax. It's the tax. Yeah.
But it was, they'd been married, I think the third time, so they took half and then the 25, and then they'd finally got to the 12.5% of all the cash going out. What have you learned the most about relationships for having a couple of marriages? Genuinely interested.
Well, don't forget, even though I've been married a couple of times, I've also lived with. So there's been more than. I know I'm a glutton. What have I learned? Frig all, nothing. I've learned nothing. But I am a big romantic. I do believe wholeheartedly in love. I mean, for goodness sake, if you don't have all of this gorgeousness in your life, what is the point of anything? But I see a lot of people that, and especially women, funny enough, that come out of relationships with nothing. And I believe that, love it comes with generosity of heart and of spirit. And so I'm not ever saying don't do wonderful things for your partner. But what I am saying is that what you have built up to date before you go into a relationship, you've got to make sure that that's protected. And that's, as I said, that's not about being mean. And I'll give you an example why. Because let's just say, I meet something. Everything I've got is in a trust because I don't trust myself. Here's a guy. Yes, it's all yours. I love you. Yes, it's all yours. Now, if we were going to start something together, that's absolutely fine. We both, if we're going to buy a property, maybe my trust can loan the two of us half of the deposit for a house. Or if my partner has no money, because to me, I don't care what my partner earns as long as they're honourable and kind. And if they don't have any money, then my trust can loan some money to the two of us to get a property. Understanding, so it's a loan, so that if in the future we split up, and dare I say it, even though I am a romantic, the odds that people aren't like our parents and stay together for forever, it just means that you can both take out what has been built up since the two of you have been together. And so I will do that every day of the week, and I do it, and I help my friends get started on the property ladder. And for a lot of people who don't have cash but have equity in a home, that is the only way that they can get to the next stage of their life as well. By using some of that equity to guarantee the deposit on a property, an investment property. In New Zealand, property doubles every 10 years. So you buy a $500,000 property today for, say, $500,000, and you guarantee the deposit against equity in your home. So it's 100% borrowing. In 10 years, potentially that $500,000 property is worth $1 million. You sell the property, pay back the bank, and you've got $500,000 in profit. And in New Zealand at the moment, of course, if you hold a property for 5 years and then sell it, there's no tax on the gains. There's no capital gain tax. So yes, going back to what you're saying, that's how I protect myself now. But I lost a lot. I didn't just start over once. I had to start over a couple of times and lost homes. Now, that will never happen again. But it doesn't mean to say that if I'm in another relationship or a partnership with someone, that I'm not going to use some of that for the good of us, for the two of us. It just means that if it came to an end, that I would not be left high and dry as I have done in the past. So, I do talk to people about that as well, and it's in a positive way, because I'm not saying don't do anything, keep everything apart. There's just a smart way in which you can achieve the things together that you want to achieve.
Bruce Pilbauer, a good buddy of mine, he's been married for 30 years now. He's in his early 50s, he's been married for a while. But I asked him about that, of how he's changed as a person for the last while, and he said his wife says that she's now on to the guy number 4. So he's had 4 different people through that 30 years of growing, which is pretty interesting. Do you think in your relationships you're the same person that's been consistent, or do you think you've evolved as well?
I do apologize for Milo. Stop it.
You're right.
Oh no, I've evolved. I certainly have. I used to love the drama and I wanted to own the world like everyone in advertising. We were the kings of the universe, bonfire of the vanities. I no longer. I don't want that sort of drama. Family is incredibly important to me. To my shame, I always remember, because I've suffered from depression throughout my life as well. And someone was, when I was talking to someone, and they said to me, look at your achievements. And I said, what achievements? I've had these failures. And they said, you've got a child. And I said, but anyone can have a child. People in the rice paddies can have a child. And I didn't mean it like that. To me, it was just a trite thing to say. So here we are on my 4th person, I suppose, in that family. My son is just, he's everything to me. My brother, my sister, absolutely. Family is absolutely everything. I do everything for what I can give them, or how I can help them. And I also, it's not just about internalizing what I want. I don't want to be a king of the universe. I now want to have a footprint that is still there when I go. And that's one of the reasons why, with Habitat for Humanity, some of the happiest times and the proudest times was going away and laying bricks in Vietnam and Nepal, and taking my son and taking clients and people that work with me, my colleagues, away with us for that experience. And in every case, they said it changed their lives. And so I'm at a stage in my life where I'm wanting to have experiences and to give my family experiences, because I can afford to do that. And friends, I take friends as well to have those experiences. But it's also now about using some of those resources to make some sort of difference. I have to look at myself in the mirror every day and say, I like what I see. And I also feel that I've got a responsibility to have a legacy, to leave. And even if one person has benefited, then that's something. So yes, you're absolutely right. And there was nothing wrong with who I was before. I wasn't a murderer. I wasn't a bad person. But with youth and in that profession comes self-absorption. And I think, and self-gratification. And, saying all this doesn't mean to say I don't like driving the nice car and having the nice, the clothes, because I'm not a saint. But I also like to have some sort of balance with that. So yeah, I completely understand, but it is an evolution, and it comes with experience. It comes with being humbled. I never thought that I was going to be retired at 40, and living this life in the south of France, and I'll probably still live there. But, life is not just an up escalator. That's one of my ongoing sayings. It's not just an up escalator. There are going to be times when you're going to come down, and going back to what you were saying as well about some people, when I had my failures, disappeared, and that's fine too. That's just how life works. I don't hold any grudges or bitterness, but I certainly have around me family and friends that have been through all of that, and so you become a lot more relaxed with who you are, your faults, and also what you've got to achieve. But and if I've failed in some things, I've failed in some things. You can't be as hard on yourself either. So I'm not going to be the king of the universe. But at the same time, I'm not going to be thought of as someone that doesn't care.
Yeah, I get interested with, I'm 35 now, done a bunch of, ego rah-rah shit, early 20s, try to build, learn, you're just on the hustle. And I think you're right. You're potentially self-absorbed with what you want. Big one for me is, you have 2 daughters under 3, perspective changes quick, fast, and now it shifts. So I still feel the same, but then, I've taken a breath of just same. So I think I'm smarter. I know I'm smarter, but maybe I'm more, calculated, a bit more particular, instead of just run, gun, shoot everything, which is interesting. But I was just genuinely interested. I've got a bunch of friends that have been married for a long time, bunch of friends have had multiple divorces, bunch of friends, you see the whole gamut, and you sort of look out into the future and you start seeing, what can you learn, what are some key things. But the one from Bruce was really insightful last week, because I understood what he meant, because over 30 years he's been 4 different types of people. There's still same person deep down, but then I guess there's a shell that you sort of layer off another shell. And, you talk about an always up escalator. I'm wondering, is life more like a malfunctioning elevator? You're not sure if it's going up or down, but it's going, and you're still in it, and you can't do shit about it.
That's right. And you got to cling on somewhere. But in your case too, having young children, that changes your perspective, because it's not just about you anymore. And then you do start to worry about the future, don't you? Because you want, I mean, it's a cliche, but you are thinking 20 years ahead. And it's like, will my children get to see a giraffe? I mean, I took my son, on safari, and I wanted him to, who knows when so yeah, having children does start to change your perspective, and that maybe is incarnation number 2 from being a young adult into a parent.
I get it. Nikki Connors, this has been a great chat. Lots of key learnings. It's good to validate that the carnage of the advertising world was as ruckus and debaucherous as I've been told by many people. I feel like I've missed out on a few good times, but hey, 2020, maybe in another life, and check some of that out. Really appreciate your time. You've obviously got a book, which I see behind you. If people would like to potentially buy, where can they buy this fancy top 5 book, which I see on my top right?
Fabulous failure. Go to I would go to the website of propellerproperties.co.nz and order it there. It's sold out, which was fantastic. So we now have this through the company. But don't worry about worrying about the 80s and what you missed out on, because for the rest of us, we don't even remember it anymore. So it makes no difference anyway.
Well said. Hey, I really appreciate your time, Nikki. Best of luck for everything with Propeller, and thanks for your time. I know you're a very busy lady, so thanks for spending the morning having some good yarns on real estate and advertising and marriages and Milo the dog, who he's got. Is he a little Chihuahua? What is he? Is he a little what
No,
is he?
he's a cross between a Bichon and a Shih Tzu. He's the cutest little white fluffy thing you've ever seen. So,
Well, it didn't
so
sound
I
like a
forgive him
Labrador, that's for
everything.
sure.
Oh, right.
I appreciate your time. Thanks, Nikki.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
All right.
Bye.
Bye. Ladies and gentlemen, that was Nikki Connors, the queen of property in New Zealand. Interesting story. Classic pivot from advertising into the real estate world and now charging away. Enjoy the rest of the day, team. Be good, be great. And I hope you enjoyed this conversation. You can check out this podcast everywhere. It is streaming on the old YouTubes, on the LinkedIn, on the Twitter, on the Facebook. The joy of being omnipresent through technology. And I'll see you guys soon. Adios, team. Have a good day. Peace.